Join us as career changers, company leaders, industry experts, and others who have been in your shoes share their stories, insights, and lessons learned to help you find enjoyment through employment in the tech world. I'm Nemo Ashong, and this is the Empjoyment Podcast.
All right, employees, are any of you out there interested in becoming entrepreneurs and or spending time or looking to get into the tech industry, to give you an opportunity to explore more deeply what it will take for you to be successful as an entrepreneur? I know I myself was very interested in pursuing online business and growing my skills as an entrepreneur, and moving into the tech world was an important and helpful move to help expose me to a lot of the different types of thinking and people and environments that will go ahead and support the success I was looking to create in my business. So I know a number of you might also be in a position where you have an idea, or you know that you're entrepreneurially minded and you are cultivating that within an organization, and you're using that to explore and build your own employment so that when you are ready to make your move, you have the skills that you want and also the network to help support that. Well, today we're going to be talking to Larry Port, who is a CEO and founder of Rocket Matter, which is the leading cloud legal practice management and time and billing application out there. We're going to hear his perspectives from the eyes of a CEO, of someone who's run a business for the last 10 years and has been quite successful in it. We'll share some of the considerations that you might want to be taken into account now as you are working and looking ahead to building your own business at some point. And you'll also hear his journey and how he evolved his organization with the evolution of the industry. A lot of us now are in a position that the industries that we're in, or the industries that we'll be a part of, will continue to grow. I mean, just think about tech overall. And so you can hear how he's been able to use that to really make something of impact and meaning for his clients and customers. The fun part about all this here is that he had a vision and he believed in himself and made it come to life. And you hear how he did that during the conversation. I want to give you all the opportunity to make some of your visions come to life. And if you're unclear about what it is, I totally get it. I've been noticing recently that we have a lot of guests that give a suggestion of figuring out what you want to do with your career and then using that as your guiding compass to move forward. It is often easier said than done. And what I want to do is help you be able to break that down a lot more to get that kind of clarity. So I'm offering a coaching session, which you can come and get over at empjoyment.com/coaching. And that'll be the two of us one-on-one and really diving into your personal journey and getting personalized assistance. With the people that have been in part of this year, what's awesome is that they're able to leave with clarity as to what they're looking to do with their careers, and just as importantly, what they can do right now to start moving themselves closer to that goal. I also want to give you a heads up that starting in November, we're going to be starting learning experiential workshops where we'll tackle a different problem or different challenge that employees are facing and give you an opportunity to work through this workshop with others to get results that you can start applying right away. Some of the workshops include figuring out, or how to figure out, what you want out of your next experience, how to identify your unique strengths, and also how to translate your past experiences in a way that your future employers will be able to understand. That last one there is going to be really fun. Well, they're all going to be fun because, quite frankly, that's just what we do. We call it empjoyment. So there should be some joy in it, right? But we'll go through a specially crafted experience so that you can leave each of those with something tangible, something that you can immediately apply for your career moving forward. This does have education in it, but as you may know, I feel like the information's out there. So we're going to be focusing a lot on coming out with tangible results that you can continue to implement going forward. So look out for that coming in November. And if you're interested in anything like that, you can go over to the Empjoyment website, sign up for our newsletter. It'll give you updates as to when the next and upcoming workshops will be. I'm excited for it. I'm excited for you. I'm excited to work with you directly and start getting you even more results there. I'm also excited for you to benefit from this conversation with Larry Port. So without further ado, enjoy.
Hello and welcome to the Empjoyment Podcast, where we're focused on helping people just like you find enjoyment through employment. Employees, I'm excited for you because today we have a special guest. We have Larry Port in the house. And Larry is the CEO and founder of Rocket Matter, a legal technology company. Larry, glad to have you on the show here. Would you like to go ahead and say a quick hello to employees?
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me, Nemo.
Yes, thank you for making the time for this here. We'd love to explore your journey and how you got into tech and how you continue to find enjoyment through employment within tech. But before we do that, I'd love to get to know you a little bit more personally. So would you mind sharing with us your life, love, work, and passion?
My life, love, work, and passion. Sure. Well, okay. First and foremost, my favorite role that I occupy has got to be husband and dad. I have a wife. I'm very lucky to have a very good marriage. I have a great and supportive wife, and we have a hell of a time together. We really enjoy each other's company. I got 2 kids that are entering their teenage years, and they're amazing as well, and have a blast with them. And then we have 2 dogs and a cat. So, it's a pretty full house, pretty active house. We got a lot of stuff going on. And I would say that, between that and work, which I find very fulfilling, I have a very good life. We have, a lot of friends in the community. I'm very kind of at this point in my life where I'm looking to, make a difference in the world. So I'm coaching Little League, my kids' team, make sure they get a good baseball education, learn a lot of good life lessons through that. It's a great opportunity to work with kids and be a positive influence on them. And I'm also really involved in an anti-hate and discrimination movement, the Anti-Defamation League. So I've become very, focused on them as well, and really using my position here as a content producer in the legal technology industry to kind of profile lawyers and social justice issues. So we got a lot going on.
Yeah, absolutely there. And it really seems that you're fully stepping into this point of making a difference out in the world there. And, what I would ask of you, Larry, is that for this podcast here, we want to give everyone as clear of a view as possible of what it's like to live in tech. And I feel like part of that might be the things that you do outside of your job there. So, everything's fair game for today's conversation, because I feel like that's what's going to help people really get a glimpse and really get an understanding of the people that make up this industry here. So, I'm really excited for where this conversation's going. And I like to start things off here with just a frame of reference, a frame of understanding as to how Larry Port sees the world. So would you mind sharing with us some kind of success quote, a mantra, a motto of some sort that you use as a compass to move you forward in your journey and your professional career?
Yeah, geez, there's a lot to think about there. But I would say that one thing that comes to mind, especially for the context of this conversation, is something that I heard a while ago, is that it's never the right time to start a business. It's never the right time to get married. It's never the right time to buy a house. It's never the right time to have a kid. So since it's never the right time, it's always the right time. You might as well just do it. So that's something that I think about quite a bit.
And so with that there, I like this. It's never the right time. I'm actually feeling a sense of ease now. I'm like, all right, cool. We're just going to go with things for this conversation here. I was wondering, Larry, would you mind sharing with us an example in your life of when, you just decided to go with it because there was never going to be the quote unquote right time for something?
Yeah, well, absolutely. When I started my business, for sure. So Rocket Matter is a technology company. We do practice management and time and billing for law firms and lawyers and legal professionals. It's just basically what it does is it allows people in that industry to organize their cases. It's actually what a matter is. It's matter as a case. That's where the name comes from. And, add documents to it, tasks, calendar events, whatever. I'm actually a good person to be on this podcast because before Rocket Matter, I never managed a person in my life. I was a software engineer. So I was a software engineer for 6 years, working for different companies. And, starting my business was really never so much about I always thought in the back of my mind, maybe I would start a business, but I always thought I was a little bit too scared to do it. It was always making me a little bit nervous that I would actually do it. But when the idea came and we did we looked around the market, it just seemed so obvious that this had to happen. There wasn't even a doubt in my mind that it wouldn't work. And I was at the point in my career as an engineer where I could build things, right? So, starting Rocket Matter, I was working on it at night while I had a full-time engineering job being a software engineer. And that only lasted like 2 months. I couldn't take it anymore, going to bed at like 3:00 in the morning and waking up. So I also had, a little tiny, I had a baby at the time, and I had a 6-month-old, and then I had, I guess, a 2-year-old at the time. So, and we just purchased a new house. Like if there was ever a time to have an excuse not to start a business, that was it. And I just went and did it anyhow, because I figured, in a couple of years, if I fall flat on my face and it doesn't succeed, I'll just get another job. So it was actually, looking back on it, I think that a lot of people wouldn't make that decision, but I had a lot of confidence in the opportunity and my ability to deliver on that opportunity, and the risk was worth it.
I really love this confidence here. And Larry, thank you for sharing that. And I believe y'all just crossed over 10 years now with Rocket Matter.
Yeah. Yes, we did. Now, one other thing though, to keep in mind is that I had done this before. In terms of making a switch. I hadn't really started a business before, but I had made a big switch before. When I was an undergraduate, I studied, it was a major called radio, TV, film, and I went to Northwestern University. And so I thought that I really did not like the major, so to speak. I knew that I was technical, and I knew that I was creative and artistic. And to me, it seemed like mass media was the best way for me to kind of deliver on those things. And what ended up happening after school is that the internet happened. I graduated in 97. My first email account was like in 94 or 95. So that gives you an idea of like when things were progressing. The World Wide Web, which sits on top of the internet, came into being around 1992, 1993. So it was still very in its infant stages at that point. And so when I entered college, I didn't even know, like computer programming was called like data processing. It was very unsexy, very unattractive. So when the internet happened, I went back to school. And so I radically shifted my career then. So I went from the media, where I wasn't happy working, to getting my degree in computer science. So that was a major shift for me, working in the field, being a software engineer, loving it. And then the next thing was leaving my job and starting my business. So it has been 10 years, and it's been a very exciting journey so far.
I think that's really fantastic there. And thank you for taking us like all the way to the beginning of your journey there. Because, I think we have employees out here that are experiencing things and like in a sense kind of feel like, oh man, I'm so far like behind here. But like just hearing what you were talking about in this part of your journey, like the internet itself hasn't even been around for all that long in a grand scheme of things. So like the industry itself is really just starting to really take form. And so like with that there, I think there's something I would love to explore here, which is like that aspect of confidence that you had there, because you've made multiple moves now in your career. And I guess like from where you are, like how do you end up making those decisions as to like, okay, you know what, I've been doing this, but I'm ready for the next thing, or this opportunity is here and I need to go for it. So like, how have you been able to make your choices as you've been making each of these switches along the way?
Well, there's this expression, a canary in a coal mine, and it's used to describe like, okay, if you're working in a coal mine and the canary dies, then that's not good. You better figure something out, right? So for me, the canary in the coal mine was looking around at people that were more advanced than I was in their careers, and if they were happy or not. So in other words, like kind of like looking for role models in my place of work. So when I was in I was working in like the documentary film business, and when I first graduated school, and I also worked a bit as a photojournalist. And it's like, the role models were people that, at the peak of your career, you're being sent to war zones. And, as you may have picked up from the beginning of the podcast, I've always been focused on wanting to like raise a family, right? I did not want to be a war correspondent. So photojournalism wasn't a great thing, because when I looked forward into my career, it was not something that I desired. In the film business, everybody that I knew that, and this is no knock against people that are in that business, but I just personally did not encounter people that I wanted to be 15, 20 years down the road. So, but then when I looked around the software things, that I saw, number one, that it afforded me geographic flexibility. I could live wherever I wanted. So that was important. I wouldn't have to be restricted to New York or Los Angeles. Number two, I realized that it would give me the freedom to just build things out of thin air. You know, you don't need to go buy wood. You don't need to go buy supplies. You can just build something. As long as you have a computer, you can just, if you can dream it up and if you can learn how to program, you can build something. So those kind of things like really kind of were the sirens that called me there. And in terms of the confidence, you know, it's once I became an engineer, I think having worked in the film business where you're so disposable and then moving over to the engineering community where you're indispensable, such a crazy shift that you realize when you're an engineer that if you need to get another job, you can just get another job. So I do think, you know, it's a little different for me, you know, and maybe it was a little bit easier for me because I had the engineering discipline that if things really did go crazy, I could always fall back on that. I mean, it's a very hard skill, you know, so to some extent, I think, you know, my ability to thrive as a successful engineer fueled that confidence, at least in stage 2. And in the first, and when I mean stage 2, I'm talking about the shift from engineering to starting my own company. In the shift where I went from TV to, you know, being in the engineering community, that was a bit more of a risk because, you know, I didn't know what the result would be. I just knew that I was miserable in the film business and that I had to make a shift or I just would never be happy.
Yeah, it's really interesting as you describe this here and you're like talking about like you knew that you would be miserable. You knew that like you wouldn't be able to be happy with there. And then you made this switch here and like I'm smiling over here because you went from this place where you're like, I'm unhappy. Like my job could be gone at any moment. And like, if I look ahead as to what my career is going to be like, none of this is like what I want out of it. And then you made a move into something where like even just talking to you, just hearing like the energy that you're bringing into the conversation, I could tell like it fulfilled you in a very different way there. You had that kind of security and it seemed like you're working on challenging projects that and problems that excited you. Is that correct? Am I in the right vein there?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's exactly right. I'd probably do it again. I running a company is an honor. But I'm running this company because I built the application and people started buying it. But that's where my heart is. My heart is in product. My heart is in engineering. I am a creative individual. Eventually, I'm going to need to get back there because that's just where I will need to be personally. So it's great running a company, and it's been a true honor, like I said. And I love the challenges that have come up along the way and having to really try and solve them. I would never have grown as a person without starting my own company. I mean, this thing has forced me to become a 10 times the person I was before I started it. So, you know, I probably like a lot of people, you know, really am trying to constantly improve myself and really want to have as fulfilling of an experience on this planet as I can. So, you know, just having to manage people, having to solve problems, having to do all the things that you have to do, having to learn balance sheets, financial statements, all the things that I didn't know about, man, oh man, was it awesome just in terms of personal fulfillment and the challenge that it brought.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can I ask you here, Larry, about one of those specific challenges? Like if you can take us to a moment in your, as a CEO, where, you know, you faced a roadblock, a challenge, a failure even, and like really like help us understand like what was life like for you there, Larry, like in that situation. And if you can let us know about that moment and then the steps that you took to overcome that challenge, that would be absolutely wonderful. Do you mind sharing?
Sure. I mean, you know, there's so many small ones. Like, you know, it's kind of like when you are running a company, it is a series of headaches. And I mean, you can look at them as headaches, but you can also look at them as opportunities. And I think, you know, there's a lot. I mean, firing somebody is difficult, right? You're affecting their life. So you just have to do things where you have to summon courage and parts of yourself that you didn't really have. I mean, and that's kind of the beauty of it, right? Is that you have to weigh the options and make a non-emotional decision about things. And sometimes the decisions that you have to make are just unimaginable. Some of them I can't really get into, you know, just because they're kind of sensitive or for whatever reason. But I would say one of the initial challenges I've had is dealing with just really angry people and really angry customers for whatever reason. And you know, we're in this kind of role where we get thrown under the bus and blamed for things because it protects somebody's job. So because the software manages a practice and also gets their invoicing out, it's complex. I mean, it looks simple, and we have a very beautiful and elegant design to make life easy for people, but it's still complex software. It's still getting your bills out. It's accounts receivable. It's a lot. So people don't always use it right, and they will blame us to their bosses by, they say, oh, it wasn't me, it was Rocket Matter. Rocket Matter screwed it up. So, we get blamed for all manner of different things. And so learning how to deal with angry people like that who are throwing you under the bus has been a challenge. And that's going to happen if you are a CEO. That's going to happen if you're in a business. You're going to get angry customers, and you just have to learn how to convert that anger into an opportunity. Usually whenever, and that was probably the biggest insight and breakthrough that I had early on. And it may sound cliche and it may sound obvious, but when somebody comes to you, guns a-blazing, really upset, really unhappy, and you're able to satisfy their need or respond to whatever agony they're having and come out and help them come out ahead, they will be raving fans for life. So every time somebody comes at us angry, it's this really precious opportunity to make them our biggest fans. And I think, that's a very typical example of what it's like when you have to run a company. You have to take situations that are time sensitive, that screw up all your best laid plans, that interfere with everything that you're working on, and figure out how to make them come out ahead. And then on top of that, you just have to keep the rhythm of the business going. So, there's a lot of that too, that we can get into as well, is just like making sure the business continues, make sure the rhythm of the business is good, considering everything that's going on, right? Somebody said, there's this quote, I'm paraphrasing, but in warfare, your plans are awesome until the first shot is fired. I don't know what the exact quote is, but it's so true.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and I would love to explore this here. It's actually interesting, like as you're going on, like there are a lot of different thoughts that come to mind, and really that idea of hey, how you transform the situations that should be bad in your experience or for your company. You're all right, you've now kind of translated that as here goes an opportunity to create a Raven fan. We're going to do something awesome with this here. And I'm sure that's a muscle and a skill that developed over time.
Absolutely.
It was interesting. As you were talking, I realized we have the unique opportunity to hear what is it like to really start a business from a tech business from the beginning and to build it over time. We were saying 10 years here. You walked us through some of the different things that you experienced along the way, and you were talking about just actually running and managing it. And I was thinking that for employees out there, some of them are going to be interested in joining startup organizations. Some of them are going to be interested in joining things that are more in mid to late part of their maturity. And I was just maybe wondering if maybe you can give us a little bit of from the eyes of Larry Port here, how you see the tech industry and how that's changed as your company has continued to evolve.
That's a great question. So there's still opportunities out there is the first thing I want to emphasize. And if anybody's kind of really curious about that and thinking that all the ideas are washed up, I'd like to suggest this book. It's called The Inevitable, and it's by a writer from, I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head. I mean, Nemo, if you're in front of a computer, maybe you can do a search for it. But read this book. It's about all these tech trends that are happening that are kind of just inevitable, and he, in the introduction of the book, is really interesting because he says that, people are going to look back at 2016, 50 years from now, and be like, man, if only I was alive in 2016, none of this stuff has been invented yet. I could have gone in there and completely gone in and made $1 billion or whatever it is. And I think that's true. And you just have to kind of know where to look. So I know you're asking about the change in the tech industry, but I just want to start there. There's been a lot of changes in technology since we started the business. So 2007, which is about the same time we emerged, we were in our first law firm in 2007. We're celebrating our 10th anniversary in November of that happening. So when that happened, the iPhone came out. We just got lucky. Because the iPhone brought with it a Safari browser, which allowed a full HTML page and JavaScript engine to work on a smartphone. So our software instantly was mobile. That was just complete luck, right? So, but that was 10 years ago. And now there's the App Store. Now there's all this crazy stuff. Now there's all these browsers on all these smartphones. Now there's all these different smartphones. I mean, so the mobile thing has just gone absolutely through the roof. We started marketing with Twitter in about 2008, 2009. So like we were born kind of like when a lot of this stuff was born. So we got kind of lucky there because we were like some of the first people on the platforms, a little late to the blogging game, but we started blogging. So you can just imagine, how much things have changed. Now keep in mind, I'm an engineer. So when I first built the first version of Rocket Matter, I built this thing on ASP.NET web forms, which is a technology that's not used that much. And forgive me if I'm getting a little geeky here, but there is a larger point. But I had to configure our own servers. Like we leased servers from a company called Rackspace. They were bare metal servers, meaning they were actual physical servers that we had the entirety of control over. And back then, like Amazon, AWS, that was, if it was even out when we started, it was generation zero stuff. It was not something that I was willing to risk my business on. But now it's, the ability to not really have to worry so much about physical architecture with Amazon's tools, and now Microsoft's tools with AWS and Azure really changed the ballgame in terms of what you're able to do and how you're able to. It just makes it so much cheaper. And now Amazon and Microsoft, they even have these things called serverless functions. You don't even have to maintain a server. You can just put your logic up there and have another environment operated. So the infrastructure has changed dramatically, really lowering the barrier to entry. I mean, you can get up and running and hosting. We were paying $3,000 a month when we first started. You can pay $50 a month to get started and using some of that equipment. And also the tools are just so much easier. There's a whole stack called the mean stack, and all the languages involved use JavaScript for the most part. When I first started Rocket Matter, there's probably 6 or 7 languages. You have the SQL to query the database. You have the middleware language. You have the client-side stuff, which is, JavaScript, HTML. There's so much stuff heading in that direction. So from a tools perspective, it's much easier to get started. A lot more people know how to code now. It's easier to find talent. Especially if you're not in one of the major areas. If you're in one of the major areas, good luck. If you're like in whether it's Austin or San Jose or Seattle or someplace, Boston, where it's really competitive to get engineering talent, that's going to be hard for you if you're starting a business. But if you're like me in Boca Raton, Florida, you'll be able to find people because we're everywhere. Engineers are everywhere. So that's one of the things that's that's happening. And in terms of other trends, I mean, people are just consuming more and more on mobile than they are on desktop computers. It's going to be interesting to see how that continues to shake out. But in 2015, I believe for the first time, more than 50% of all Google searches were on a mobile device. So when you're thinking of things, you have to think of mobile and the desktop the same way. So and then you have there's other things too, which we can get into, which, involve like the investing community, VCs, all that kind of stuff, which, a lot of people are led to believe are the only way to start tech companies. And it's not really the case. So there's a lot we can dive into from there if you want.
Yeah. Let's go there. Like, so what comes to mind when you do that? What would you love to share with employees around that?
Well, what I would say is that, and look, I know that I'm talking a lot about starting a company and things like that. And not everybody wants to do that. So, and people might want to pursue different careers, however they want to do it. But what I would say is that there is a myth that's kind of told over and over again to entrepreneurs that you start your business, you maybe get some friends and family money, then you get an angel investor, and then you get venture capital and whatever. Then you sell the company or you go public or something. There's just some sort of liquidity event. So what I would like to say is that is a narrative that is perpetuated by the vested interests in that narrative, meaning the VC firms. But I don't think it's in the best interest of the entrepreneur to go that route all the time. There are cases where, yes, you're going to need a lot of money to do things. But if you can possibly avoid getting institutional money, I would recommend it. So what I would say is that you can read all the blogs about how to start a business, but beware the source. If these people are tied into the venture capital community or the investing community, you're going to see things where it's like, okay, you should do this. And it's presented in this way where it's like an honor to get funding. It shouldn't be considered that. It should be considered I don't want to say a dishonor. I don't want to say that at all. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that it should be by necessity only. If there's any way you can possibly avoid getting institutional money, you should avoid it. And for those of you that are looking for work and want a career shift, I think it's very important not to get suckered into a company that says, look at all this money we've raised. Because a lot of times when people raise a lot of money like that, they never learn how to generate a profit. They're kind of like, stuck dependent on the external funding to float the business. And if things don't improve, and if there's no clear path to profitability and the business is just burning cash, that next round of funding could very well dry up and you may not have a job. So I think it's very important, whether or not you are thinking about starting a business, to really recognize that the mythology of getting venture funding is not what it's cracked up to be. And I think it's important for the job seeker that may go out to a technology company to recognize that even if somebody got like $20 million in venture, you really need to have an understanding of the foundational financial strengths of the business to make a decision about whether or not that's going to be somewhere that you want to work.
Larry, I really appreciate this. Like, to tell you the truth, I didn't even see the conversation go in there. And like, I feel so like, it feels like it's such valuable information. Like, I'm sitting here as an entrepreneur trying to get out there and helping other people. And the conversation I had in my mind was, do I go down the funding route? Everyone was saying, you need to get funding. How are you going to get your funding? What's going to happen there? And I'm like, I want to build a business that I know works. And if I need extra money to like help as an investment from that standpoint, I like to be there. That's when I'll cross that bridge. So I appreciate you like giving us that perspective on it from really like the side of things that we may not normally hear, because there's a lot of like hero, like putting people up on a pedestal for that aspect. And I think this really shines a light on things from a different perspective. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Let me just tell a quick anecdote. So we started around the same time as another company that does a similar thing, our competitors. They went institutional. We did not. Now, did they grow faster than us? Did they get bigger than us? Yes. Have they knocked us out? Not even remotely close. Am I making good coin? Am I completely fulfilled doing what I'm doing? Absolutely. So again, to me, a lot of this has to do with the life you want to live, So it's just, I would learn a lot about that before you make those kind of decisions.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask you here, because just to kind of wrap things up here, you've been talking a bit here around running the business and such, and I've been thinking about, there are a lot of employees out there that are entrepreneurially minded. I myself was one of them. Like, I knew I joined my prior company because the next thing I wanted to do was to run my own business. For anyone that's there right now, like, do you have any thoughts, any suggestions on how they can maximize their time while working for someone to position themselves in a place to be successful when they start their own business?
That's a really good question. And I'm going to answer it kind of like, all right, so I think the biggest thing is to get the courage up and to get the inspiration. So I would gravitate towards what's making you want to scratch that itch. And just continue to get inspired. If it's listening to a Tim Ferriss podcast or a Seth Godin, TED Talk or a Malcolm Gladwell book, find those sources that that really get you fired up about wanting to do that, and just keep stoking that. So, just keep getting excited about it and keep getting inspired to do it. The other thing is that you need to know a couple things ahead of time before you get in there. And look, I don't want to make people think that they have to spend all this money up front. You can do things kind of on the cheap, but you should really think about, if you're going to go into business, especially with friends, what are the ownership structures that are going to make you most likely to be successful, right? Because you really want to think through worst case scenarios, especially when you're dealing with friends. The other thing to think about is that, and one thing you may want to do is you may want to look around for business lawyers that specialize with startups. There's a certain breed of those, because they might be able to advise you on how you're going to start things up. But they also, and look, I am somewhat of a fan of small law firms, because that's who I work with. And I would recommend for the entrepreneur finding a small law firm, not a big law firm. because big law firms, what happens a lot of times is that you meet somebody who's really dynamic and really important. They just happen to be a managing partner. And then the work gets passed around to like associates and people that you've never met before. Do the right thing and work with a small law firm and somebody that you have the relationship with that you know is going to do the work and that understands your situation and that you're very cash flow sensitive. So that's one thing I would say. So do the right things when you're starting your business and get professional help. The other thing is that you want to make sure that you are got a handle on accounting. And if you're like me, that's like something that you may have an aversion towards. Over the years, I understand it. And over the years, I've gotten decent with it. But it wasn't because I wanted to. I'm a creative. I'm not a numbers type. I'm a logic person, but I'm not a numbers person. If that makes any sense. So, it's very important to make sure that your billing and your books are straight because it can be more complicated than you want to know. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that you should really start thinking about your personal style, how you want to run things. And I think I'm a little lucky there in the sense that a lot of people don't delegate. I like over delegate. In fact, somebody told me that I am a drive-by delegator. I just delegate things and I need work on my follow-up more than I need work on my delegation. So, like kind of knowing yourself and knowing your strengths and knowing your weaknesses, getting fired up and knowing the fundamentals about, doing the right corporate paperwork and doing the right, just having the right pieces in place for when you're ready to go is what I would suggest.
Oh, that's incredible. I really appreciate that. And I think that like people can really walk away with something meaningful. So Larry, I want to be respectful of your time here. We're like right up at the top of the hour. I just wanted to see if you had any like suggestions. Actually, let me rephrase this. For employees that are like fired up by this conversation and they're like ready to move forward in their journey, whether it's entrepreneurial, whether it's like making a decision to like, okay, I am going to get out of something that's making me feel miserable and go pursue something that gives me more fulfillment, more enjoyment. What suggestions would you have for them to take in the next 7 days to move them closer to that level of enjoyment?
Wow. So the next action to take, look, I'm a big believer in writing a business plan because not just to write the business plan, but just it forces you to think through what you're interested in doing. And there's a lot of good templates out there. There's this organization called score.org. It's retired executives that publish a lot of financial model spreadsheets and sample templates that is a good resource for people to take a look at. So from a concrete level, that's a place I would start thinking about. I would also really kind of have an honest conversation, an internal dialogue with yourself that like, how confident are you about this thing? Like to you, is it completely obvious? To me, it was completely obvious. And, I know it's like late in the podcast to be saying this, but I recently started another business because of the success of Rocket Matter. I started a payment processing company for law firms with a friend of mine. So it does like credit cards and ACH transactions and things like that. And in both cases, it was just so clear that the opportunity was there and that we could make it work as long as we executed it properly. So you're going to get people telling you no, and you're going to get people telling you that your idea is not going to work. And I got that, and it didn't really faze me. So I would don't be afraid to share your idea because you're going to get feedback, and you should observe like almost like an out of body experience. You should kind of like observe how you react to the feedback that you're getting. If people are saying that's never going to work and you're like, well, maybe they're right and this is not a good idea, that's probably not good. But if people are like, yeah, that's not going to work and you're like, you're an idiot, then don't say that to them. But if that's what you're thinking internally, then that's a good sign. That means that you're pretty confident that your idea will work. People are going to say no. People are going to shoot you down. Nobody is going to have the level of enthusiasm for your idea that you're going to have. So what I would say is that, just stay true. If you really think that your idea is going to work and it's going to pan out, then stay true to it. And maybe if you're nervous about it, you take the risk anyhow and you see how it plays out. And hopefully you're in a position where you could spin it in a way that if it doesn't work out, that you learn from your experience and maybe you're more valuable anyhow.
This is like it. really, really amazing things here. And I think like, what I was hearing this from like the entrepreneurial side, and I was like actually taking it in myself, but I was also thinking about this from like the employee side. And like when I was thinking about making my career change here, and just that idea of like being able to tell someone, put it out into the world and see what the reaction is and how you respond to that, that was just really powerful. And when someone's like, no, I don't think that you can do it, or why would you make that change? And you still feel that like bodily reaction, and just listening to that and saying that's probably a stronger indication than you would realize.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can leave with kind of like one thing.
Yeah, please.
Let me just say this is that it's not easy. It's none of this is easy. When you're not happy in your career and you want to make a change, it's just not easy. It's not a good position to be in. I understand, what it's like to be there. And, it's, so whatever you can do, what I will say is this, that it's really up to you if possible. Obviously some people have different kind of financial constraints or situations, or, are suffering through one of these latest like hurricanes or things that are going on right now. But, if you can do things, try it. You just don't want to like look back and like regret not having done it. You don't want to be unhappy. And it really does. It takes a tremendous amount of courage, but if you can find it, then do it.
That's awesome. And you've given us ways to find it. You're like, stoke that fire, whoever it is. Like, Larry, I see this coming through for people here, and employees. I hope you take Larry up on this here and really move forward in a way that resonates with you. So Larry, I do want to just say thank you so much for your time here today. How would you if we wanted to continue and follow up with you and kind of continue to follow the success of Rocket Matter and such, what would you suggest for employees to just kind of stay in the loop?
Look, if you're listening to this podcast and you have any questions for me, you can always email me, larry@rocketmatter.com. I may not be able to get to it immediately, but I answer everything. So if you're looking for a nudge or something like that, just let me know.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that, Larry. That's really kind. So with that, then, we can go ahead and wrap things up here. I want to thank you for your time, your experience, your expertise, your candor. I feel like you were just like really open about like the real deal and how you experience things. And I think we're all benefiting from that as a result. So, just thank you for sharing and letting us know how you experience enjoyment through employment. We wish you all the best. Take care, Larry.
Thanks, Nemo.
So employees, Larry gave us very clear call to action in terms of how we can bring this to life right now. And it started with making a plan. So what I encourage you all to do is to sit down, take 2 hours, take an hour, take 30 minutes, take however long you need to, and just start working on your plan. For those of you that are looking to get in entrepreneurship, make it your business plan. For those of you that are looking to stay as career employees and employees, write out a career plan. What would you want your career to look like? And just sit down and just start writing. It's not, if you have the clarity of your vision, great. That's going to end up coming out on paper or through the laptop. If you don't have that clarity just yet, just starting that process of journaling and starting to capture your thoughts actually moves the needle much further than you'd expect. And so I truly encourage each of you to take advantage of this journey. And what I'll just ask is that you just take a picture of whatever your plan looks like. It could be on a picture of your laptop. It could be a screenshot. It could be a picture of your notebook. Maybe it's a vision board or whatever it is. I can be pretty prescriptive, but I know that each of us have our own natural ways of communicating. For me, for example, I like writing mind maps, and it's just a bunch of circles all connected. And it's the fastest way for me to get what's out of my mind into the world. Regardless of it, I guess I'm putting this all out there because I don't want the method to stop you from taking action. All right. So do that, take a picture of it and come share with us into the enjoyment community, which you can get to by going to employees.com. It's the home of the employees. So it makes sense there. And using the hashtag Joyney, JOYNEY 33. So that no matter when you're listening to this episode, even if this is all the way in 2020, which is not that far, realistically, you can be a part of the conversation and we can continue to help one another. All right. Here's to doing the things that bring you joy each and every day. Take care, employees.